The Patriots look to extend their winning streak while the Bucs look to come out of their bye week hot. That and more on a crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into a crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the New England Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, host of Locked On Bucs. He is Nick Cattles at Nick C Radio, host of Locked On Patriots, and we are here with you covering those two teams 5 days a week for Locked On. This crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Nick, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to start things off with the Patriots because this is a really, really interesting matchup based on where these two teams are right now, how they've been playing over the course of the last month or so. But you have the Bucs coming out of the bye. You have the Patriots getting ready to play this road game and then be on a short week and play on Thursday night. So I'll kick it to you first. What is the biggest story right now for the New England Patriots outside of maybe Drake Maye being one of the MVP leaders in the NFL? Quite a fun surprise there.
Well, I actually think it is Maye, and it's not because of, the MVP stretch that he has had. If you go back to, what happened last weekend, James, I think that was Drake's toughest game probably since the Pittsburgh game where he had multiple turnovers. The Atlanta defense kind of got to him a little bit. He made some mistakes. He wasn't seeing the field necessarily great. He made some interesting decisions, leaving the pocket early, missing some open guys. And he said, during Wednesday's meeting with the media that there are a lot of sacks that he has taken. And he said, a lot of them are on me. And he's right. So I think people are interested, James, to see how Drake Maye responds after maybe his rockiest game in a while. I don't want to say it was a terrible game because it wasn't. If you wanted to grade it, you'd probably grade it a C. So, how's he feel going on the road against Tampa? Tough defense to face, tough defensive front. And, don't forget, Kayshon Boutte not practicing on Wednesday. Doesn't sound like he's going to practice or play this weekend. And Kayshon Boutte's been very critical to this offense.
Yeah, selfishly, from a fantasy standpoint, I was hoping that the top story was going to be the Travion Henderson breakout. We haven't gotten that yet, but Drake Maye's been a lot of fun to watch. I know a lot of Bucs fans were dialed in to that game because they were rooting for the Patriots. They wanted to see the Falcons get beat. And it was a super entertaining game. And it was kind of a tale of two halves, right? This was a Patriots team that came out and just dominated the first half. And then the Falcons slowly worked their way back, thanks in large part to the play of Drake London. But I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, and obviously you can shed more light on this, it seems like when you get the right fit at the top, it just changes the entire landscape of what this team is capable of. And I think that Vrabel has brought that. And I know I personally have wondered, could Mac Jones have been doing this same thing with this coaching staff? Because Mac Jones has been a solid quarterback. And you look at all these young quarterbacks across the league where teams give up on them or coaches move on because they're fighting for their job. But kind of what has Vrabel meant for this Patriots team this year that is rattled off 6 straight wins?
Oh, he's meant a ton. He's meant a ton, James. When you look at the culture that he is setting in New England, after last year, which was a debacle in every sense of the word, I mean, you just can't imagine a head coach handling as many things badly as Gerard Mayo did, unfortunately for Gerard. And that's off, letting Bill Belichick go and back-to-back 4-win seasons. Mike Vrabel walked in and, it's not like he's won a Super Bowl as a coach, but he did take Tennessee to the AFC Championship game. He has won at a decent level as a head coach in the league. I think he's a well-respected guy. Players seem to love to play for him, and he's been able to get the most out of some of these guys already. And, his messages seem somewhat simple, but they're consistent. And he has really good relationships with his players and his coaches. He treats them like human beings. and he connects on a human level. It's not all great, of course. He also gets after them. He criticizes them. He's a tough coach. He's not an easy coach, but he's able to kind of get to the ground level with these guys. And he just built a belief. And you look back at week 5, the win against the Buffalo Bills, I feel like was really the moment where they said, hey, we could actually be a good football team this year. Because up until that point, it wasn't like you were awesome, right? You lost to Vegas in a game that wasn't good. And then, you look at Miami. You won a game in Miami, which was nice, but Miami had its own issues going on. You needed some breaks in that game. Pittsburgh, you turn the ball over 5 times and you give the game to the Steelers. And then you had Carolina. And at that time, Carolina was seen as, are they really a serious program at the time? That win looks better in hindsight with what Carolina's done. It was really that Buffalo win on the road, Sunday Night Football. And it was also, let's not get it twisted. Mike Vrabel's important, but as we know, James, in the NFL, you need a quarterback to win games. And Drake Maye's level, him getting to the level that he has gotten to this early has been a surprise, a pleasant one. But I'd say, that's really the main reason this team has won football games, because the quarterback's literally been one of the top 5 or 6 in the game.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of fun watching Drake Maye. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up against the Bucs this week. But you mentioned Kayshon Boutte. I had some speculation on an episode earlier this week about Christian Gonzalez. The Patriots are not coming into this fully healthy. And as it has been all season long, the top story for the Buccaneers is the injury problem. So Bucky Irving, Chris Godwin, and Hassan Reddick all missed practice on Wednesday. Things don't sound overly optimistic when it comes to their status for Sunday's game. Todd Bowles was asked about Bucky and Godwin. He said they're both running, but Bucky specifically still has not taken any contact with that injured shoulder. He also spoke about how there's going to be a little bit of a ramp-up period before they return to the field. So it looks like they'll probably have to wait at least one more week before either of those two guys return to the offense. Of course, you have starting right tackle Luke Gedeke. The 21-day window has opened for him to return from injured reserve. I don't expect him on Sunday as well. But looking ahead, that's obviously big positive news for the Bucs. Now, I've talked a lot about Bucky and what his return could mean for the offense. And if that isn't going to be this week, unfortunately, that could spell trouble for the Bucs. Rashad is averaging just 3.7 yards per carry, and he does have 4 touchdowns, but over the last 2 games, 73 yards on 23 carries. Going against one of the best run defenses in the NFL, looks like things are going to be on the arm of Baker Mayfield, as well as the protection of the offensive line. Baker has struggled the last couple of games due to injury and protection issues. The Bucs will likely be rolling with the same weapons that they've had for the last game and a half with Mike Evans out. So that's to say it'll be Rashad and Sean Tucker in the backfield, and then Emeka Egbuka and a bunch of other guys at receiver.
Yeah, I love Emeka Egbuka coming out of Ohio State. He was one of, if not my favorite receivers in the draft. I thought it was a home run pick. Absolutely love the guy. There's just so much that he can do, but I know he's dealing with the hammy, and that seemed to hamper him last weekend or 2 weeks ago against the Saints. I watched that game on the All-22 this week, and, look, Baker wasn't great. I pretty much saw him as kind of like a neutral. If you look at the plus plays and the minus plays, he pretty much was even. But a lot of that was not his fault to me. A lot of it was, as you mentioned, the protection issues were rather obvious. I thought Graham Barton was horrendous in that game. And you look at, the receivers, they just weren't consistently getting open. You would look at a play, and even when Baker had time, guys weren't necessarily open for him. So you mentioned the run game, and that's the one thing about the Patriots defense that has been up and down, and they've shown some vulnerability, and they could be without Christian Ellis, who is one of their, top 2 or 3 linebackers. That position has not necessarily been great. So we'll see if he actually plays. That could be a hit for them. But, the one thing about the defense that they have done week in, week out, no matter who they're playing, is stop the run. They've been dominant. And thanks to Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, Harold Landry, those 3 guys on the defensive line have been really good against the run. So I do think, if you're a Bucs fan and you're going into Sunday, I would be stunned if the Bucs could consistently run the football against this defense, because that's really been their calling card consistently from week 1 up until right now.
Yeah, and it hasn't been slouches that they've been shutting down. They have shut down every running back that they've come across. Bijan, James Cook, They've really done an absolutely phenomenal job. All right, key matchups that are going to go a long way in deciding who wins this game. That is coming up next on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs. You know the saying, look good, feel good? The problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp, but they feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. That's why there's Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they perfected it ever since. Their shirts are stretchy, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and machine washable. No ironing, no dry cleaning, and that makes looking good that much easier. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled Mizzen, and Main, MAIN.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL, the number 20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. For example, you can now pick more on a player like Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists all in the same lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Thank you again for making Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. All right, Nick, there's going to be some key matchups in this one for both sides of the football. I want to get the first one that you have for the Patriots. Where are you looking for the Patriots to try to get an advantage on the road against this rested and hopefully a little bit healthier Buccaneers team?
Well, James, if you want Drake Maye to play good football on Sunday, if you're the Patriots, and you obviously do, you need Drake Maye to be protected. And I think Will Campbell, who's been, I think, above average this year at left tackle. I know Dane Brugler from The Athletic just came out with his all-rookie team so far halfway through, and Will Campbell is on that team. I think he's been good. At times he's been really good, but this is a tough matchup. Will Campbell, Yaya Diaby, when you look at the run and the pass defense that he plays, and, you can't, if you're Will Campbell, you can't consistently lose a matchup. It's obvious, but you just can't consistently lose that matchup, because if you lose that matchup, it opens up a lot of other areas that could get a little bit leaky. And by the way, Garrett Bradbury, the center for the Patriots, who's actually been way better than I thought he would be. He struggled in Minnesota last year, especially in pass protection. He has exceeded expectations. He did not practice on Wednesday. We'll see if that is kind of a management thing, because Mike Vrabel's, said over the last week or two that he's going to start managing some of the veterans as the year gets deeper. Patriots don't have their bye week until week 14. So maybe that's more rest than anything else, but you've got Will Campbell at left tackle. If he starts getting leaky, Jared Wilson, the other rookie offensive lineman at left guard, he's had some issues against, big pass rushers and strong guys in the middle of defensive lines. And then you don't know what's going on with Bradbury. So you need Will Campbell to be good on Sunday.
Yeah, and I love that you started with the offensive line and the protection there, because that's exactly where I'm starting for the Bucs. And it's not exactly a player for player matchup. Mine is Todd Bowles versus Drake Maye. Yeah, and Bowles has this defense flying around, especially the last couple of weeks. And you mentioned it, even though Drake Maye has been among the best quarterbacks in the league so far this year, he's also among the most sacked. He said that some of those are on him. He's second to Cam Ward this season, having been sacked 34 times. So the Bucs as a team are in the top 10 with 25 sacks in just 8 games. So a little over 3 per game. And you add that to that, their 12 takeaways, including 7 interceptions. Bowles has been making life really difficult on opposing quarterback. So Bowles can dial up some pressure early on in this game and get after Maye on that second drive. The Bucs have notoriously started off slowly this year, so they really have to come out and establish kind of a little bit of dominance here on the early Patriots drives. It could wind up being a really, really long day for that offense. But with all that said, Bowles has to find a way to get that pressure without blitzing. I started diving into some of the numbers on Drake Maye this year. Yeah, and Bowles has gotten creative in that aspect, but Maye has been really good against the blitz. He's been sacked less. He has fewer turnovers when he isn't blitzed compared to when he is. And he also, when blitzed, has a higher completion percentage and a better passer rating than when it's just against the natural pass rush. So it's going to be on guys like Vita Vea, like Elijah Roberts, and then, of course, the edge presence of Yaya Diaby, who's been on a heater, and Anthony Nelson, who is coming off of the NFC Defensive Player of the Week back in week 8 for his performance against the Saints. It'll be on those guys to create some chaos against that offensive line, but ultimately it's going to fall on Todd Bowles to find the right combination and timing, which he's really done a great job of over the course of the last month.
Yeah, Drake Maye has been very good against the blitz, and he saw a lot of it last week against Atlanta, who also loves to blitz. Raheem Morris loves sending heat at the quarterback. When Drake Maye makes decisions from the pocket against the blitz, for the most part, he's been really good. The issue, and the one thing again, and it goes into the sack stat, is that at times he bails early. I don't know if it's he doesn't trust his pass protection. I don't know if it's just his natural go-to is kind of tuck and run or try to extend plays. So the Patriots have really tried to pound it into his head. When you start breaking away from the pocket, make sure you remain a passer. And he's done that at times this year. Other times the eyes drop. He runs. He misses open receivers. He runs into sacks. So that has been an issue with him. And I think it's been the biggest issue, relatively speaking. Again, he has played like a top 5 quarterback. There's only so much that you can nitpick, but that's been an issue. Anthony Nelson jumped out at me. I was watching that Saints game, and I wasn't even aware that he won the Defensive Player of the Week. I keep the plus minuses, as I go through the game. And I had Anthony Nelson with, 6+ plays and not a single negative play against New Orleans. I thought he was terrific. I thought Diaby was outstanding. Diaby was the only guy that actually graded a little bit higher than Nelson against the Saints. So I think with those two edge guys, I've also noticed that, at least from what I saw against the Saints, when you go back to week 8, it seems to me that Todd Bowles loves dropping Anthony Nelson into coverage and playing some games with some blitzes from the corners and the safeties and linebackers. So, Anthony Nelson seems to have that versatility. So he was impressive to me. I look at, another matchup that's interesting, and it's going to be, more trench talk, but Harold Landry against, Charlie Heck. And what can you get in that matchup if you're the Patriots? Because I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I didn't see it correctly, I thought Tristan Wirfs had a rough week against Chase Young against the Saints. Surprisingly, outside looking in, I go to a game thinking, as I sit down to watch the game, I'm thinking Tristan Wirfs is going to be just an absolute stud because that's what he's been. But he had some issues against Chase. But I don't know if you go in, if you're the Patriots, James, on Sunday thinking K'Lavon Chaisson, who's been really good, by the way. I don't know if you want to bank on Chaisson winning that matchup against Wirfs too often. So that means Harold Landry is going to have to, be good. And I thought Charlie Heck, the offensive line, I thought Heck was decent, against the Saints. I didn't think he was great, but I thought he was decent. So can Harold Landry win that matchup consistently? And then maybe you get Chaisson to beat Wirfs once or twice. And I think you take that as a win if you're the Patriots.
Yeah, I will say that was probably Wirfs' worst game ever. Like it was really bad. And you have to think he's not 100% yet. And the bye week probably helped him, and it probably motivated him knowing how badly Chase Young was able to beat him over and over. But that Landry versus Heck matchup is incredibly terrifying. Heck has been way more down than up this year. Now, he has improved since he took over in week 2 when Luke Gedeke left that Texans game with the injury. That was an absolute nightmare. But back-to-back weeks, this offensive line has just been abused by both the Lions and the New Orleans Saints. So hopefully they are getting back on track. But yeah, Bucs fans, you need to circle Landry in this one because that could be a game-changing player on the Patriots defense. Real quick, the other one that I'm looking at is going to be Emeka Egbuka against the Patriots secondary. We already kind of mentioned it. All signs seem to point towards Christian Gonzalez playing in this one. And I'm kind of assuming that that's going to be the primary matchup as far as who's going to be on Egbuka in this game. But Drake London is coming off quite a game against this Patriots secondary. 9 receptions, 118 yards, the hat trick. And Egbuka is going to be truly healthy for the first time in 3 weeks. So the targets for Baker have not been great the last couple of games, but these two have an incredible connection. They're looking to get back on track this week. And the Patriots secondary as a whole, allowing the 6th highest reception percentage in the NFL this season, allowing the 8th most yards after catch. So regardless of whether or not Gonzalez plays, you can throw on this secondary. And when you have a guy like Tez Johnson, the 7th round rookie, getting more work and getting more involved in the offense and the ability to get tons of yards after the catch, as well as stretch the defense, Egbuka is going to see some one-on-one opportunities. There have not been many times that he has been stopped by corners in those situations. And I think Bucs fans are chomping at the bit just a little bit to see if Egbuka lines up against Carlton Davis at all on Sunday.
Old friend Carlton Davis. When you look at the situation in the defensive backfield for the Patriots, it's an interesting one because it feels like they're still trying to figure out what they want to be. Do they want to lean in on man coverage, or as Mike Vrabel calls it, cat coverage? You get that cat, I get that cat. Do they want to lean in on that? And last week they played some man, and they actually did have Christian Gonzalez, kind of shadow Drake London from time to time, but the 3 touchdowns by Drake London, none of them were on Gonzalez. And there was one big play against Gonzalez, and it was really just an unbelievable catch by Drake London. He high pointed it. Gonzalez had good coverage. Gonzalez did illegally contact him during the route, so you have to include that. But Gonzalez also had some really good reps against Drake London. So it feels like Christian Gonzalez, after missing the first 3 weeks of the season with a hamstring, is kind of getting into shape the last couple of weeks and looks more like Christian Gonzalez than he did prior to that. The biggest mismatch really to me, Marcus Jones has been terrific this year, but what teams are doing is they're taking advantage of his size. And especially when you get into the low red zone area, when you look at last week's game, Atlanta did it. The first touchdown for Drake London, it was, Christian Gonzalez passing off Drake London to Marcus Jones, and the Falcons knew they were going to do that, and you just throw it up, and Drake London mossed. He Randy mossed Marcus Jones, went over the top of him and came down with it. The second touchdown was for Drake London. That was a motion deal, and they ran a rub route, and Marcus Jones kind of got lost for a split second. That was enough time. Again, kind of just floated it over his head. And then the third touchdown for Drake London was just an unbelievable catch against Carlton Davis. Davis had good coverage, but it was a one-handed diving towards the sidelines catch where, he held on to it, got both feet in, and then went to the ground and survived the catch, as they call it. So I do think some of that was Drake London just being terrific, but there have been issues with giving up the occasional big plays. The safety play, Craig Woodson, he's playing like 99% of the snaps. He's a rookie. He's given up some plays. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they even approach Emeka Egbuka.
All right. Well, we are going to talk about what each of these teams need to do to get a win on Sunday. That is coming up next here on Crossover Thursday. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your favorite team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it is frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, All fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. If you want to see the showdown between the Buccaneers and Patriots, you can get tickets now for under $220, but it's not just sports. You can get concert and theater tickets as well. I just took my son to a concert last month, and I've been monitoring the chance to see that show again this weekend with my son as well as my dad. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs. And this crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Nick, what do the Patriots need to do in order to get this road win and extend their win streak to 7?
All right, so I'll quickly run through my three keys for the Patriots. Number one, I think you need some production. You mentioned them earlier. You need some production from Travion Henderson in this run game. Also, Terrell Jennings. I would not be surprised if Terrell Jennings, gets even more opportunity this weekend against Tampa. He runs hard. He's kind of just a tunnel vision runner. He's not going to bounce things out, but he's gonna run hard straight forward and get you some extra yards off it. But if you can get production from your run game with Travion Henderson and Terrell Jennings, with Ramondre Stevenson, who I think is likely going to be out. He didn't practice last week, missed the game. He did not practice on Wednesday. He has a toe injury. We don't know if it's turf toe. We have no idea what it is. But if you can do that, then I feel like Tampa can't necessarily pin their ears back consistently, right? They can't go bananas and go after Drake Maye if you can have some first and second down success. The other thing I would say, and this is kind of low-hanging fruit, is just limit your mistakes. You're on the road. Tampa, I think is one of the two best teams you faced this year. The only other one is Buffalo, and Buffalo mentioned that earlier. So that means, make sure you're not getting a lot of flags thrown on you on Sunday, so you don't give extra possessions or extra downs to Tampa. Don't make those kinds of mistakes and turnovers. Again, it's kind of low-hanging fruit, but, the Patriots, they've had 7 turnovers between the Pittsburgh game and the Atlanta game. That's why they lost to Pittsburgh. And when you look at the Atlanta game, that's why Atlanta hung around. I mean, the Patriots were about to go up by who knows how much right before halftime. And then you get the fumble from Maye, and then the return all the way inside like the 5-yard line. Atlanta scores a touchdown instead of being down by, 3 touchdowns possibly at halftime. Now they're down by 1 touchdown. And then Drake comes out and throws an interception, early in the second half as well. So you got to limit those turnovers. And the third thing I would say is, you want to see if you can erase Ibuka. I know you mentioned him. We talked about him a little bit, but I do think if you can limit Ibuka, I don't think Tampa has a ton at their disposal in this passing game right now. So if you can slow him down, if you give up one shot to somebody else, okay, you can survive that. But you have to go into Sunday saying to yourself, Emeka Ibuka can't kill us. He can't, as you said, he can't Drake London us. Because if he Drake Londons us, this game could be, this could be really difficult for us to win. And I think it's going to be difficult for them to win to begin with. So they've got to do their best job against Ibuka and remain disciplined against him.
Yeah, and if they eliminate Ibuka, there's going to be a whole lot of other players that Patriots fans have probably never heard of that are going to be catching the ball. You have Tez Johnson, Cam Johnson, Ryan Miller. I think the other guy would have to be Cade Otton, right? He's continued to get more involved in the passing game. But yeah, if they are able to limit and contain Ibuka, that's going to go a really, really long way in their ability to get a win on the road. All right, for the Bucs, I'm going to do one on offense, one on defense. On offense, you have to give Baker time. I'm saying that for the second crossover episode in a row, but he's been under relentless pressure the last 2 games, and it shows. Not only that, but that pressure continues to build throughout the game. You combine that with his injury, and he just hasn't looked the same as he did the first month and a half of the season. Vrabel knows how to bring the heat. This offensive line has got to be ready. We've talked about their struggles against the Saints last week, Tristan and Charlie Heck, and the matchups that they have. The Patriots are top 10 in interceptions this year in the NFL when pressuring the quarterback. They've racked up 20 sacks to go along with 7 interceptions. Tristan Wirfs has to return to form. The whole line struggled against the Lions. These guys have got to get it together to give Baker the time to throw and start opening up some run lanes to at least show the threat that they're willing to run the ball against one of the better run defense. Defensively for the Bucs, it's about how quickly you can make the offense of the Patriots one-dimensional. That's when Bowles is going to be able to draw up a lot of different looks and cause some confusion and frustration for Drake Maye. We saw him do it to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck in their last game. Drake May's way better than those guys, but Bowles also did it to Jared Goff the week before. So he has a way of finding the right looks to throw off even seasoned veterans. You bring that pressure, you bring those disguises, you're going to create opportunities for a defense that has been loaded with ball hawks the last couple of games. 2 takeaways against the Lions, 4 against the Saints. 1 resulted in a touchdown. 2 more should have been touchdowns that were wrongfully blown dead. But that's what this team has been feeding off of. I expect that to continue this week.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting game. I don't give my prediction on the crossover, but I will say, until I give that final prediction on Friday's episode, I have to look at it and say, well, you lean Tampa. I mean, I think that's the only fair way to look at this is you lean Tampa. This game will be in Tampa. Again, one of the best teams, one of the top 2 teams the Patriots have faced. Baker Mayfield is somebody who I absolutely love watching play. He is just, everybody knows, competitive gene through the roof. And you always feel like he's just never going to die on the football field. Like he's going to find a way. There could be 7 minutes left, and you still got to make sure you drive the stake through his heart. So, and this defense is a tremendous, tremendous challenge, especially that front and Todd Bowles and his defensive mind. So I would lean Tampa right now. Will I stay that way? Friday's episode, I'm just not sure. You're going to have to check it out, James.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I won't give my prediction until my Friday episode either, but the Bucs 2.5-point favorites, over under 48.5. I don't know. This could go a lot of different ways. I think it's going to be one of the better games of the week. I also lean Tampa. I think coming off of the bye, even though Todd Bowles is not historically good coming off of the bye, I think that got these guys healthy enough to return back to the way that they looked the first 6 weeks of the season. Again, we'll see how things shake out the rest of the week. But yeah, I don't know. We could end up seeing a repeat of the Bucs Seahawks where it's just the Drake Maye, Baker Mayfield show. And it's an absolute duel of 2 high scoring teams and 2 quarterbacks that were basically able to do whatever they wanted with the football. It's going to be a really good one, but that's going to do it for this crossover Thursday episode. Please make sure you're checking out the Friday episodes of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs as we give our final predictions. You can follow on Twitter at @JYarcho_Bucs, at Nick C Radio. Make sure you're subscribed to both Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next time right here on Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.